Welcome to the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast, presented by the Fantasy Football World Championship, home to the industry's most accurate rankings.
What is up, everybody? I am your host, Adam Krautwurst, for the Full-Time Fantasy Football Podcast. And with me, as always, on these beautiful Wednesday nights is Jody Smith, Mr. Full-Time Fantasy himself, and Shawn Childs, the brainchild behind a lot of these rankings and projections that we're going to be talking about tonight. How's everybody doing? How you doing, boys?
Doing good. Getting ready. So a lot of action going to be happening in the next 10 days. I think the news is going to pick up a lot when they start getting on the field.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
AFC
we're
West,
covering from, had a live Scott Fishbowl draft in Dallas this weekend. So that was a fun 8-hour round trip. Well, 4 hours there, 4 hours back, but
yeah,
got it done.
Got it done. It's funny. You were talking, you went to Dallas to do yours. You did like the first 10 rounds live and you just finished. So it took a couple days to finish your entire thing. We did our first 10 rounds in Buffalo. That was like 2-3 weeks ago. And we just finished yesterday. It took like 2 weeks to get through 10 rounds of a slow draft. But that's why I hate slow drafts. But anyways, it was a wonderful time. Scott Fishbowl. But yeah, tonight I'm excited. We're going to talk about the AFC West. This is one of the best divisions that we can talk about. I think the most exciting. But before we do that, I want to talk about the great announcement that Full-Time and FFWC put out this week, the Circa Draft Series. We're always, I go to Vegas every year to draft in the high stakes stuff. I know, Shawn, you've been there before. I don't know if you're planning on going this year, but now you can go all summer long to Vegas to do mid stakes and high stakes drafts. I mean, they have them Thursday nights, Saturday nights, Sunday nights, August 17th, August 24th, August 26th. You can do their mid-stakes Circa Championship, which is basically the Full-Time Fantasy Championship, the 350s. And you can also do some main events out there. They've got the 6 p.m. World Championship on August 27th with Darius Rucker. So, the Dolphins make him cry, Darius Rucker. He'll be out there. You got Eric Dickerson has a draft going on out there, VIP parties, all that type of stuff. So, definitely check that out over at the FFWC. It's exciting. Shawn, are you thinking of going out there for one of these early August drafts?
I probably am 25% going. I could fly for free and stay for free. But I just
what a flex. What a flex that is.
I gambled last March, lost some money, so I know I can get some rooms at the Venetian, and I have points from JetBlue. So
there you go.
But you still have to be there and spend some money, and I don't know if I want to do that other than drafting. And then it's really for doing the fantasy stuff, getting ready for week 2. It's kind of makes everything in a short window, so it's a little more difficult. So
the question is, do I want to gamble with my marriage? I mean, I'm already going out there. I'm going to Vegas in early September. I was just in Cleveland for the FSGA. I'm going to Canton for the Expo. I'm going to Kentucky for the KFFSC state championship drafts. I mean, I don't know if I can sneak it away. I'm in New York, so it's not a hop, skip, and a jump to get to Vegas. But I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna do my absolute best because it looks amazing. But so yeah, let's dive into the AFC West here. Super exciting division, obviously loaded with talent. We'll start with the Chiefs. So Shawn, Chiefs, obviously Patrick Mahomes, superstar quarterback. QB1, maybe in NFL eyes, maybe not fantasy eyes, but ADP has him, as the QB1. Did you anything different you projected for Mahomes this year, or is it the same old?
He's an interesting player. I mean, when you look at the receiving core, I mean, Kelce's kind of the main core of his production, and his other receivers last year was just made up of a bunch of guys splitting time and no really defining player. He has, Sky Moore could get better. They added, one other receiver there to help him out. But, I don't think that like Tony is a really talented player. But can he stay on the field Valdez-Scantling's more of a big play receiver. Rashee Rice is a kind of that guy that I'm kind of attracted to, just because he's, I guess, the new kid on the block type of thing. So I think Mahomes, he kind of makes players better around him, spreads the ball around, and he does what he does best, and he makes plays.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, they led the league by a wide margin in yards after catch last year. Now, I don't know, so I'm not the projections guy, but Jody is if you know the answer to this, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. Is yards after catch for receivers, is that a sticky stat from year to year? Because I feel like people were projecting a kind of a downgrade for last year. Mahomes, he's going to fall off because he loses to Tyreek Hill. But then the team goes out, he doesn't have any weapons. Yet all these weapons lead the league in yards after catch. Is that a sticky thing?
Generally, that comes down to athleticism, which actually is, from as long as the guy's in his prime from season to season, it is. But you'll see game flow can impact that, offensive play callers, coaching changes and all that. It just depends on schematically. Do you have an aggressive offense, or, do you have someone who's willing to take advantage of that as a play caller, as we've seen here in Houston, where, you keep getting these offensive play callers who don't know how to take advantage of that kind of thing. So what I thought is interesting with, Shawn's initial write-up here for the Chiefs was, Shawn, you're huge on Rashee Rice. I mean, you have him actually leading the team in like pretty much every offensive category. And, I definitely see it. I did his scouting profile, here for Full-Time Fantasy. Love it. You don't generally see a team like the Chiefs invest a second-round pick on a guy unless they have plans on using him. You have Juju Smith-Schuster exiting this offense. So, Shawn, what did you see in Rice, and why is it that you're just so much higher on him than, say, Tony?
I think talent-wise, Tony's pretty attractive. He just had, the baggage from the Giants last year. He got to the Chiefs. They use him sporadically. He has an injury history. I think that he can do a lot. I guess it's a trust factor for me. And in addition, in the fantasy drafts, most people are, I guess I'm, hang on the injury low. Most people are like, he's going to gravitate and go up higher in drafts. And even though he's only like a back end wide receiver 3 right now, which is probably favorable considering, the offense it is, but he's the guy that if he does anything in August, he could go up 10 spots, where Rice is going to be kind of a freebie, but he's a big guy. I think he can work the outsides of the goal line, middle of the field. He can, good hands, and I think he can make plays. And I just like what I saw of him. I can't say that I saw like a Hopkins, but something in the same kind of profile that can do some stuff. And I think that, he'll gravitate to Mahomes, and, he needs somebody to step up. And he's the new guy. And I think that, and it's not like I was really, I have 60 something catches. I don't have it right. I got to click on it. But I mean, it's not like I had,
it's funny. You can have a player leading, a team like the Chiefs, which is going to be a top 3 offense overall. But the way Patrick Mahomes spreads the ball out, even though you might project a guy to lead the team and receive receptions, yards, and touchdowns, it can still be, relatively modest stats. I comped Rashee Rice to Roddy White. When it comes to size, it's right the same there. We saw him in the Senior Bowl. He did well. The athleticism, you have a 96th percentile vert, 95th percentile burst. He's got these traits that generally, come out and kind of show a player that's got a real potential here. So I'm really interested too. I love it. I love that you're, a little bold there. Everyone's on Kadarius Toney, and for better or worse, Toney obviously has immense upside, but he's got a pretty low floor too when it comes to the fact that there were questions about work ethic. You see with the Giants, as soon as that new regime came in, they didn't want anything to do with him, and that to me is really alarming.
Yeah. Did you, Shawn, how many games did you predict Kadarius Toney for? Do you have him for the full gambit?
Toney, I probably, let me get to the rosters for Chief. I have him probably missing some time. I mean, 50 catches, 630 yards. I mean, he definitely, looks like even Rice is 56. I mean, there's not like, the big gap there, but, there's an opportunity if the Kansas City Chiefs receivers got the targets. Like I think they had 244 catches the year before, 2 years ago when Tyreek Hill was there. Last year was 196. So, Tony, I definitely have priced him in some missing games and more. I'm kind of neutral. It's a dilemma because there's is there enough balls with Kelce getting so much and Patrick Mahomes is going to throw the ball, but everybody could get 100 targets or 80 targets at wide receiver and stuff. So it's a challenge.
Yeah, it shows like this where I get to really like lock into like the process and the projections and make you think like, okay, even if like your projections are off on Rice, right? But you love him. You love Jamar Chase. You were like the highest in the industry in Jamar Chase. His rookie year coming in, Rice right now is going wide receiver 75 in drafts. Like you can take him in like in round 14 in these drafts. You can take him in like every draft. And if he stinks, you just cut him. You're going to cut your 14th round pick probably anyways. So like you can just, but if he hits, if he does do what you say, or maybe even a little bit more, he's a wide receiver 3, a flex. Like that's a really big thing there. So to me, I think personally, if Tony plays a bunch, I think Tony is going to be the guy there because I just think he's so talented. Former first round pick, like has always been good when he's been on the field and used, but I just think it's hard. You can't project him for 17 games because he's just probably not going to play 17 games. So, but yeah, so it's just interesting. Rashee Rice, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, just guys that are just kind of all kind of on the same thing. 56 catches, 50 catches, 48 catches, 41 for Valdez-Scantling. I hate the saying, but I like him more in best ball probably, right, guys? I mean, where you don't got to pick which one's going to score every week. You get him for 6 touchdowns, 5, 4, and 3. So it'll be interesting there on the receiver position. It's funny. We talked to Mahomes, we skipped right over the running backs and dug right into the receivers, but that's what everybody, is kind of talking about, like who's going to do what there. Now, were you worried at all, last thing before we go back to the running backs, were you worried at all about Sky Moore's kind of a bust of a rookie season? Does that factor in at all to the Rashee Rice kind of projections, or is it a case-by-case basis?
I just don't. I guess I don't know what to make. Like, I guess they said he's going to play out of the slot, and I just don't know if there's enough targets there. I mean, he's a fast guy, and there's parts of his game that look like they have upside, and he's coming into the second year in a very talented offense, so he definitely can make a jump. But they drafted him early. He's the one, like Valdez-Scantling. He was with Green Bay with Rodgers. He's got 1 year with Mahomes. He is what he is. Tony's got the injury risk. The other two are the kind of the wild cards, for me. Moore could have upside and he could make a jump, or Rice is kind of the value. So it's we'll get more information in August where they start talking about it. But more I'm just kind of neutral and kind of following for now.
They're also cheap right now too. You know what I mean? Like you can just take bits and pieces of it and just hope that the guys that you take end up getting pushed up.
We keep hearing lately that's been the the go-to thing that Sky Moore's the favorite to work in the slot and all that. I mean, I'm still a little skeptical. I mean, when you look at talking about a guy with 23rd% catch radius, he played fewer than 29% of snaps last year. I don't know if he was just not up to speed or what the issue was. He's got speed, ran a 4.41, but I find myself more interested, guys, really, really late in Richie James. We're talking about a guy who is a proven performer out of the slot. He was 9th in slot snaps last year. He was number 6 in quarterback rating when he was targeted, 8th in contested catch rate, 9th in win rate versus man coverage. I mean, this guy was getting open, and we're talking about with Daniel Jones. I'm kind of curious the caveat here is he's got to make the roster first. But if somehow Richie James becomes the main slot receiver there, I'm kind of curious if he can post those kind of numbers with Daniel Jones, what he could do with the Patrick Mahomes. So he's a guy. And you talked about, the other guys going really late in drafts, Rashee Rice. Well, Richie James is basically going undrafted. So, hey, you got an 18 or 20 round draft, might as well scoop it up and see if he makes the roster or see if he can make an impact this summer.
Yeah. Those are good points. Onto the running backs is again another kind of ho-hum group. You don't know what's going to happen there. Pacheco, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jerick McKinnon. Those are kind of the guys that are getting drafted. Pacheco going highest, going in the 6th, 7th round of drafts here. You only have the Chiefs projected for 8 rushing scores Is that is that like normal for them, or is that low? Is that
Are you excited about that?
no, I'm not at all. Like
They had 14 the last 2 years.
Okay.
It's got to be more than 8 though, because
they still pass a ton.
No, I haven't
in the
projected
red
for
zone.
I haven't projected for 17 rushing
okay,
touchdowns.
I don't know what
Pacheco's got 9. It's the touchdowns to the right of the
it's 8
the
receiving scores. That makes
Yeah.
sense. That makes
and
sense.
they had a dozen receiving scores last year, which is kind of the outlier there. So
That makes because that was my next question. Like, didn't Edwards-Helaire like catch 5 touchdown bad? Perfect. Thank you for correcting that. So 17 rushing scores. Got it. So yeah, so Pacheco's going the highest. It's one of those guys where like last year I was super high on Pacheco because he was the guy that was rising. You could get him in the 12th, and then it was the 11th, and then it was the 10th, 9th, whatever. You were able to get him in that range. Now he's consistently being taken higher. It's going to be interesting to me. I don't know if I can buy back into that height for Pacheco, undersized back. Where do you see this backfield landing, Shawn?
Well, he's going to definitely be the lead guy. Probably get about 15 touches a game. I got him, maybe catching 25 passes, somewhere in that range. Maybe get close to double-digit touchdowns. I really am. McKinnon did well last year, and it's kind of like game flow type of thing. And he really had those 2 games late in the year. He scored over 30 points. Was pretty impressive. But I really, if I'm the guy that I think that everybody are maybe not sleeping on, but I think Edwards-Helaire in a contract year is kind of a handcuff for me. I'm going to gravitate to a running back on a good team that's a backup, and the same as like McKinnon was going late last year. But Edwards-Helaire's in his career, when he played, he's averaged 11.94 fantasy points per game in his time playing. He's been hurt, obviously, 14 games the last 2 years. It's kind of tricky. But now if he could back up and be the number 2 and then get some of the receptions, and if Pacheco had some issues, he could step up. So I think he's kind of the value and more of a sleeper. I prefer him over McKinnon. McKinnon might go a little bit later, but but those two you could handcuff Pacheco and Edwards-Helaire pretty easy, I think. And I think that's the Kansas City backs were pretty impressive at times last year.
Jody, where do you have this backfield?
It makes sense to handcuff if you're going to do the Isaiah Pacheco thing, which I kind of like him too. I mean, it's a little concerned this week that he's placed on the preseason PUP list. Still recovering from the injury he had last year. That's a bit of a concern, but Jerick McKinnon, I don't think anyone's expecting the same numbers out of him. He was 20th, or he was 9th in targets last year, and he played his way with all those touchdowns to RB top 20 season, and I don't think anyone actually expects that to repeat. Plus, we're talking Eric Bieniemy's not there anymore, so it wouldn't shock me at all for Jerick McKinnon to kind of fall off. I kind of been eyeing Deneric Prince, the undrafted rookie out of Tulsa. Very good size, 95th percentile, 4.41 40-yard dash. He's a 96th percentile speed score. Apparently, he's shown pretty well early so far here in camp. So that's a guy I'm kind of interested in seeing what he does with extra reps here in the next week or so, and in August while Pacheco is sidelined. That said, I still think Pacheco is a legitimate contender when healthy. He's I think he can get 1,000 yards in this offense. The Chiefs are going to be spending a ton of time, obviously in the red zone. They throw a lot, but he's not going to do a lot as a pass catcher. But I think he can do enough as a ball carrier. I'm really interested. I think I have him as my RB23, and like Shawn said, it's very easy to handcuff him. I don't know where I feel about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He keeps burning me every year, so I feel like I'm trying to avoid him. But in rosters where you can squeeze in a handcuff, it makes sense.
Yeah, right now Isaiah Pacheco's going as RB28 over at the mid-stakes tournament, the full-time fantasy championship. So yeah, you'd definitely be getting value there on him. I like to go with the later guys. This Prince kid, keep an eye on him. He could be this year's Isaiah Pacheco, especially with Pacheco out. And like CEH, like you said, we've all been burned by CEH so many times, but when he gets they let him around the goal line. I think it was through 4 weeks. He was like RB3 last year because he wasn't getting a lot of touches, but he was catching touchdowns. And every time he touched it, it was at the goal line. And he was scoring a ton of touchdowns. And everyone just kept saying, It's going to fall off. It's going to fall off. He's not getting the touches, and it sure as heck did fall off. But when he gets the opportunity, he's converted down there. He's not going anywhere, right? He's a second round pick. They're not going to cut him. Maybe they do. Fine. Then if you take him in the 17th round, which is where he's going, you cut him. But I think he's not going to be inactive on game days. So I don't know. He's a guy that I like to store kind of at the end of a bench. And if things go right, he knows the offense. They trust him. Although he's been a bust. I can't imagine. Every time I think about CEH, I think about, man, what if the Chiefs took Swift or Jonathan Taylor or Dobbins, like one of these actual good running backs in that draft instead of CEH. So super interesting stuff there. But moving on to the tight ends, right? The tight end one. Normally we'd want to skip the tight end for most teams, but moving on to Travis Kelce. I mean, he's tight end one for most people. Shawn, you've got him for 104 catches, 1,242 yards, and 10 touchdowns. I mean, that's going to probably be the tight end one this year again. When projecting him, did you factor any type of age cliff in there, or are you just gonna throw the stats in there, and if he falls off, he falls off?
I went and looked at Tony Gonzalez. I might have mentioned this on another show, and his 5 seasons after age 33 with Kansas City and Atlanta, he had 409 catches for 4,187 yards and 35 touchdowns. So he was like a 800 so guy with 7 touchdowns. And Kelce's, his probably playing a lot better offense and higher upside, and he really is the number 1 receiving option there. So I was like, maybe I shouldn't be frightened of Kelce. The only thing that's different from Kelce the other years, a lot of drafts, he's getting drafted in the mid-first round, trying to get the tight end edge. But you know what? He is an edge, and he plays in the right offense. So I guess I should jump on rather than missing the end of his whole career.
Yeah, I feel the same way. He's a guy where I'll just take, and if he burns me, he burns me. And he is that big edge, but also what comes along with that too is if you do take another tight end, which you normally, if you take Kelce, you're not taking another one high, but if you can get like a Gerald Everett, you can get a sleeper tight end, a Higbee, and if Higbee ends up exploding and Kelce, I don't think Kelce's going to fall off stats wise unless he gets hurt. There's no, this quarterback's too good. He's too good. It's just going to be an injury due to age or bad luck or whatever. So if he gets hurt, you can grab a tight end that can keep you viable, even though he was your first round pick. But anything to add to the Kelce thing, Jody? Are you super high or super low on him compared to, ECR?
No, yeah, I mean, he's locked in number 1. I've still got him at, close to 23% target share. Shawn's numbers, pretty close to mine, 96 catches, 1,237 yards, 9.7 touchdowns. I think that's, right around what Shawn said. Maybe Shawn was a tiny bit higher, but I mean, he's the biggest edge in fantasy football when it comes to the gap between him and the player that's directly below him. And, in a normal type of season, you'd see a player like Mark Andrews would easily be a number 1 tight end, but, not when you're in a, what's quite probably is the greatest tight end that's ever suited up.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So moving on to the Chargers, but before we do, I just want to remind everyone tonight there is a Circa Las Vegas Fantasy Championship online draft tonight. That's at 11 o'clock Eastern. Only 5 spots left for that. I will be in that, so come watch me draft quarterbacks and tight ends way too high in that format and make fun of me and take all my money. But there's a draft tonight, 11 p.m., 5 spots left. That will definitely fill. It's in the red. Once it's in the red, Scott won't let it not fill. So it's going to fill. I'm excited to do that again, 11 o'clock tonight. So moving on to the Chargers passing game, Justin Herbert, a guy I'm super high on this year. I think he has potential. He has QB1 potential overall for sure with his talent, his rushing ability. Shawn, how did you project him this year for this Chargers offense? New offensive coordinator there. They bring in a new receiving weapon in Quentin Johnston. I mean, the sky is the limit for Justin Herbert.
Yeah, he was, the injury definitely hurt him last year. And the thing that probably, was the bigger factor was that he lost the rushing value that he had in the past. And that should come back this year. He probably is going to be a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the league in passing attempts. He has really 5 good options now. He's got Eckler, Allen, Williams, Johnson coming in, and the tight end. So he has pretty, a well-rounded core, and he's going to chip in running. So he's going to throw a ball a ton. The only thing, the trickiest thing is for him is that, Allen got hurt last year, and Williams has a history of, missing some time, and it could go sideways. I mean, I'm a fan of Eckler and what he's done, but something about fantasy sports, when somebody does something 2 years in a row, like seems like the third year you don't want to get back on them, but it's hard to ignore what Eckler's doing in the offense. So, if Eckler got hurt and one of the receivers, it could go, things, but based on the pure options in the passing game, Herbert should have a pretty impressive season, and he definitely should push to that upper echelon.
Yeah, Jody, where are you on Herbert? I've got him as my QB5. What are you thinking?
Oh, he's firmly locked in as my QB4. I mean, he's like right there, to me, close to actually competing for top tier. With the big three. That's how much I love, Justin Herbert this year. And, a lot of factors played in last year. He wasn't healthy most of last year, but he still toughed it out. We saw that game where he was basically not even able to move his arm, but yet he still finished the game. That really impacted his play last year, like Shawn just mentioned. His rushing production, which had been really good his first 2 years. I think he ran for like 8 or 9 touchdowns first couple of years. That kind of got reeled in last year. I don't think he ran for a touchdown last year, and his rushing production kind of dropped in half. But the thing is, he still managed to be towards the top and pass attempts for the season, and just a sheer volume play. And when you're looking at the addition of Kellen Moore, this guy was either first or second every year in situation neutral pace of play when he was with the Cowboys. Last year, Herbert, for the various reasons, was towards the bottom of the league when it came to average depth of target. He was forced to throw all these targets to Austin Eckler and shorter than we'd like to see. When you look at what the Cowboys were able to do with Kellen Moore at offense, Dak Prescott, where's my numbers for what Dak Prescott did? When it comes to yards per attempt, Dak was 13th and 10th, and Dak last year was number 1 in red zone accuracy in this offense. And you look at Herbert's total touchdowns his first 2 years, 36 and 39. Last year we saw a huge decline down to 25. I think 100% healthy with Kellen Moore, with the addition of Quentin Johnson into this offense, which is another big playmaker that can come in. I think Justin Herbert's going to probably lead the league in pass attempts, and I think he's going to get close to 40 total touchdowns. So that's why I'm so high on him this year.
Yeah, I love him. You guys mentioned Austin Eckler going here. So we got him projected, Shawn does, for big time numbers, projected for 16 total touchdowns, 929 rushing yards, another 684 receiving yards. What do we want out of our fantasy running backs, guys? We want goal line touches, and we want targets. And that's exactly what Austin Eckler does. And he just happens to be in an offense that's awesome with running backs behind him that stink. So he gets, he kind of just gets everything. He has everything going for him. So yeah, obviously love Austin Eckler, but you like you said, Shawn, for a guy his size, his age, can he do it 3 years in a row? Do you have him playing all the games, or what did that factor into your projections at all?
No, I got him playing. I just, the last year they just kind of rotated somebody else on early downs and kind of tapered. I mean, 211 carries is, what's that, 14 a game maybe or something like that. So, somebody else is going to get some early down action, and he's going to see all the pass attempts. But, that kind of keeps him healthy. But, they do give him the chances at the goal line too. So,
that's fine. Like, I don't care about first downs. Like, I don't care about in between the 20s. Like, give me the catches, the targets, the touchdowns, the green zone, the red zone, all that. Like that's
Are you old enough to experience like a Larry Johnson or something, or is that before you? Were you born?
No, listen. I've been playing fantasy football since like my first draft. My first draft was a Randy Moss's rookie year. So that's
98, right? 97, 98?
90, yes, 97, 98.
All right.
The first 4 picks in that draft were Brett Favre, Cordell Stewart, Barry Sanders, Terrell Davis. Those were the first 4 picks, and that's how far back
Get
we
me
go.
started on Cordell Stewart.
Flash.
I got his jersey upstairs.
There you go. There you go. But yeah, I was definitely a youngster. But so yeah, Eckler's a stud. I mean, he's RB2, but again, he's a guy that I haven't been drafting a lot because I am worried about that injury cliff. And, especially he's going in the first round, right? Top 6, 7, 8 pick. A lot of these drafts are receiver crazy. Like, I don't mind going receiver and kind of passing on Eckler, hoping, that you don't miss on a big season from him. But, even, and it's one of those situations too, where even if Eckler has a smash season, the receiver you take in the first round can also have a smash season. So then you kind of avoid that injury. Jody, is he your RB2 or is that where you have him?
Yep. Currently, I have him at, the numbers are similar, having at about a 15.5% target share, which, 78 grabs, 107 targets. I have him over 1,600 scrimmage yards, 14.4 touchdowns. So, a bit of a drop off. And of course, there should be concerns with a guy who's taken on, the role he's had over the last 2 or 3 seasons, how good he's been. But hey, he's been healthy and all that. You know what? I was able to, in my Scott Fishbowl draft, I was able to stack him with Herbert from the 106. He slipped all the way into the middle of the second round, so I snagged that. So I got my interesting little Charger stack after all, and I'm excited about it because, like I said, I've got my QB4 and my QB2. So
yeah,
pedal to the metal.
In some drafts, he slips too. I was doing a full-time fantasy mid-stakes the other night, and I was picking 11th, and he fell to 10th. So, if I can get him at 11 and kind of build a different team than some other people have, I like it. But I'm kind of off of Eckler draft-wise this year. I mean, I'm sure if he plays, he'll be fine, and points per game, he'll be fine. But nothing really to talk about behind him. Kelly, Spiller, Roundtree, they are what they are. If you want to, I wouldn't even bother even handcuffing Eckler or grab. If he goes down, they're going to mix it up between those 3 guys. I mean, right, Shawn? I mean, you don't have anything. You had 84 attempts for Kelly, 46 for Spiller. Like, do you see any of these guys being a real handcuff back?
I guess the only thing last year that Spiller kind of underperformed, I thought he'd be a little bit better, but the other 2, I mean, Kelly got the chance last year, so Spiller kind of keep an eye on him, but I'm not, somebody has to step up.
Big disappointment last year.
Yeah, I just don't think they're very good. I think if Eckler goes down, that you'll just see Herbert pass more, A-Dot launching the ball down the field. That'll probably be good for everybody else in the receiving core and the tight ends. Speaking of the receiving core, loaded receiving core, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston, Josh Palmer is your 4. Isn't too bad. Although I see, Shawn, you have Josh Palmer as the number 3 here. 40 catches to Quentin Johnston's 34 catches. I hate to see that. I'm big on Quentin Johnston this year, especially in best ball. I think there's a 0% chance that Keenan Allen and Mike Williams both play all the games. And whenever they miss, I think whoever the next guy up is gonna be a great value and a great smash. Why do you have Josh Palmer as the wide receiver 3 here?
He was productive last year. He filled in pretty good. I don't and Johnson, his catch rate in college was 57.2%. He averaged 19 yards a catch. He really kind of like a big play receiver. His route running and release off the line, needs some work and stuff like that. So I don't think, he's got size, he's got speed, he can make big plays, but I don't think he has the whole package. So I think that he'll work as the deep threat, but I'm not as high as everybody, I like Rice. Rice is, got 56 catches, he got 34, but he has 2 other receivers on the team. Allen's gets well over 100. I really like Mike Williams. If he ever could stay healthy, he's kind of like really Johnson's more of a overlap to Williams, because Williams can make those big plays and he can score in the red zone with his size. So, I don't think that he is somebody that overlaps with Allen. So I think Palmer would be closer. So they're kind of close, but I just think the skill set Palmer did a little bit last year, might be a little bit ahead. And the other guy's more of a big play receiver for me. So where he's going, I'm probably not going to get him because everybody's seeing what he did last year, 60 for, 10-69, 6 touchdowns. But he played 30 games in his college career. He scored 14 touchdowns. So it's not like he was, scoring a bunch of things in close too. So talented player with upside.
Yeah, I think he's more of a yards after catch guy. I think he's more of a yak guy, which is kind of odd because of his because of his size. He also played at TCU. I mean, he kind of made that whole team. I mean, he disappeared in the national championship, but the semifinal game, he was insane, running by guys. So I think it'll just be interesting there. I mean, if the Chargers liked Palmer so much, they wouldn't have drafted Quentin Johnston. So I think there's some room there. Now, again, if Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, if I knew they were going to play a full healthy season, I probably wouldn't touch Johnston, but I just think there's an opportunity there. And closing line value, too. Like, if you're getting him, like, you're able to get him late. Let's see where he's going here in the full time. Yeah, he's going like the 8th round. Like, if you're able to get him in the 8th round, 8-8, wide receiver 47, and you can get a couple of weeks, when Keenan Allen or Mike Williams are down, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. There's going to be a lot of shootouts, Chiefs, Broncos, Raiders, stuff like that. So, I'm all in on the offense, but this discussion and these projections definitely make me consider Josh Palmer here as maybe even draftable too. What do you think, Jody? Who do you got as your number 3 receiver here?
From a pure fantasy standpoint, I take Johnson over Palmer, but it's really interesting because I actually have Josh Palmer with a higher individual target share, and he's got more targets and more receptions. I just feel like Quentin Johnston's big playability. He's got that speed. I feel like with the way my projections came out, he's over 12 yards a catch. And I don't have Palmer quite that high, and I feel like Johnson has I have him over 5 touchdowns, and I had Palmer down at like 3.5. So it came down to I kind of like Quentin Johnston. I feel like he is a better candidate to come in and fill that Mike Williams role when Williams misses time, because inevitably will.
Yeah.
But overall, Palmer should see enough role. Like I said, I actually have him getting more targets, even with Johnson being on the field. So they're both fantasy relevant, and both guys to target late in draft, especially if you're, as high on the Chargers as I am. And I forgot to mention when I was talking about Palmer that using full-time fantasy strength of schedule tool, which I'm still writing up, I released quarterbacks, I think 3 weeks ago. Chargers have the number 6 easiest schedule this year. So that's just another factor that plays into all of these receivers. And of course, for Justin Herbert.
Absolutely. Did you just release the wide receiver one as well?
Yeah. Wide receivers was this week.
Awesome. Those are so good, so valuable. Great for making tiebreakers among these guys. Yeah. So, I mean, not much to say about Allen and Williams. I don't think you have either of them like projected crazy out of what probably most people do. Keenan Allen for 103 catches for 1,100 yards. Only 10.6 yards per catch there. Makes sense. He's a lower ADOT guy, kind of older too. Mike Williams, 72 catches for 1,000 yards. Eight touchdowns. Obviously this is if these guys stay healthy. I don't really love either of them at their ADP. Mike Williams is going at the 412 as wide receiver 29. When he plays, I'm fine with that, but no one's been higher on Mike Williams than me over the years. I take him every year, and every year he's awesome, and every year he ends up costing me because he's never there when I need him. Keenan Allen, I don't know, at his age, barely, he missed a whole first half of the year last year, kept getting pushed back there was the worst hamstring injury in the history of football. I think he missed like the first 9, 10, 11 game and I just think he's too old. Wide receiver 15 at the 2-3 turn. At the 3-1, I can't pull the trigger there on a guy like him. I'd rather have a DK Metcalf. I'd rather have even a Calvin Ridley, just on the thought of upside there. I'm taking a running back there. Who am I kidding? But I think the projection. That's right. I'm taking a quarterback there to stack with Jefferson. That's right. It's around taking Cousins. But yeah, it's just, I think the projections are fine. I think they're wonderful. It's just for ADP for drafting. How do we apply these projections? How do we apply this stuff to drafting? I just can't take Keenan out at the 2-3 turn. How have you guys been drafting these guys at all? Shawn, sorry, I'll let you go first.
I got Allen in one of the underdog drafts, like a best ball type of thing, and he was at 3-4, so it didn't seem so bad. You got you maybe one. I don't remember. A team was 1-1 out of the first 2 and took another back and a receiver. But a guy that potentially catch 100 catches in the early 4th round, it makes more sense, like you said, at the front.
Yes.
It's a little bit different. But I guess every format's a little different, and I think that was a half-point PPR league too, so it was a little bit different. So,
I feel like I'd like to, as much as I have Herbert, I'd like to be able to pair them, but it's a little tough to say because if you're in a 1 QB format, you have to draft Allen before Herbert. And to me, the appeal is stacking the two of them. So that makes it tough. Now in Superflex, if I already have Herbert and I've drafted him early, obviously you're talking a first, second round guy, then I feel like I might be willing to push Allen up into, like a top 20 wide receiver spot. So, but that just depends on, what you're trying to get away with in your particular draft.
Yeah. Chargers tight end, Gerald Everett's the main man here. Shawn, is there room for Everett to shine with all these receivers? You got him for 65 catches, 660 yards, and 5 touchdowns. What are your thoughts here?
If they throw the ball 750 times or something like that, there's definitely a lot of chances. But it's just the volume should be there. The wide receiver 3 for the Chargers is going to have a lot more competition, so that's going to steal some of the things away from the tight end. But then again, Everett's going to get see probably softer coverage and some things. He's going to be kind of inconsistent from game to game, but he'll sneak in there, and he definitely improved last year playing in his first year in that offense. So just he's more of a steady guy for me, and just I don't see a big more upside on him, but
Yeah, no, I completely agree. He's a guy, but I've been kind of mixing in later and certain builds and an athlete, a guy there in the offense that can produce for sure. So yeah, moving on to the Denver Broncos. This is a team that I just don't really know what to do with. You either got to be, I feel like you got to be either all in or all out on the Broncos this year with Sean Payton coming to town. Because it's like a fresh start. It's like a brand new, okay, what do we do? Do we take everything into account from last year? Do we start fresh? How did you go about projecting Russell Wilson, Shawn, in your projections here?
You just definitely have to take into account what's happened in New Orleans, and then even, Wilson before the last 2 years he kind of really struggled, but I think he averaged the 4 previous season 35 touchdowns. As far as passing attempts, I think the 558 is the most Wilson ever had coming in this year. Under Peyton, Drew Brees consistently had over 600 pass attempts, and maybe at the end of his career they turned a little bit more rushing team, but I think Wilson definitely has a chance to push over 600 this year. Their running backs looks decent, but I think that he seems motivated. I don't love all of Jeudy. I do love Jeudy, but I think there's enough there for him to to push higher and have a rebound, and I think he gets fairly priced, especially when you're considering he's most likely going to be a QB2 unless you really want to cheat the quarterback, and which some people will. So I have to believe he bounces back. He's young enough, and he has enough. He was a winning quarterback, and he outperformed whatever we thought early in his career, and I think he bounces back.
And he's got the weapons too. Jody, I know you're a big Russell Wilson guy.
Right. Currently, ADP QB 18. I have him as my QB 11. I think Sean Payton and Joe Lombardi are going to be able to come in and fix whatever ailed Russell Wilson last year. And my main thing I take away is that it was Nathaniel Hackett is what was the problem, last year. You look at Russell Wilson hit a career low, just 16 touchdowns last year. And, Shawn just mentioned what he, was typically averaging. He's still within his prime. But last year, there's some things that, that were good. He led the NFL in deep ball pass attempts. He was top 10 in air yards. And as soon as Hackett was gone, all of a sudden, towards the end of the year there, Russell Wilson was down the stretch, was QB3, QB 22, QB 5, and QB 2 again. And he averaged, and the thing is, all it was he averaged over 30 rushing yards during that time. So it was like maybe it was like a relief, a sigh, or just a little slight change in play calling. All of a sudden we saw, some hints of the old Russell Wilson. And, I keep mentioning the full-time fantasy strength of schedule tool. The Broncos have the 8th easiest schedule this year for quarterbacks, and during the fantasy playoffs, number 3 easiest schedule of the entire slate. So yeah, I've been scooping up a whole lot of Russell Wilson. I'm glad to take him as my QB2 where applicable as in super flex leagues. And I think It may be a bit risky to take him as solely as your starting quarterback, but if you wait on quarterback and you're in a situation where it's in a towards the middle part to later part of your draft and Russell Wilson's still on the board, I got no problems taking that gamble that we'll see Sean Payton and Joe Lombardi be able to pry another QB1 season out of him.
Yeah, that was an absolute mess last year. I mean, yeah, I have to just blame the coaching staff. I mean, Nathaniel, if you guys were as bad at fantasy football as Nathaniel Hackett was at coaching, or even calling an offense, you wouldn't have any money to play fantasy football ever again.
But he did okay for Rodgers. Rodgers.
That's what I keep hearing. Him and Rodgers.
I'm kind of curious. So let's see how that marriage works in New York.
But it was
kind of curious.
Their offensive line had issues last year. I mean, Wilson was sacked 48 times. I mean, he had huge problems. I mean, their left tackle, I think, was banged up. They replaced somebody else. I mean, they should be better in that area, maybe not top. But the Saints, when they were at their best, they drafted good offensive linemen too. So, they have to get those in Denver too. But, Wilson definitely should bounce back because Seattle didn't have great offensive linemen over there.
Right. That's right. And listen, maybe a running game and the play action can help with Russell Wilson. Javonte Williams, Samaje Perine, Tyler Beatty behind Perine there. I was actually a big Beatty fan coming out of college. I think he went to Purdue, I think. But anyways, probably not going to get to Tyler Beatty tonight. But Javonte Williams, to me, is he going to play? I've been kind of fading Javonte Williams with that shredded knee. It reminds me of J.K. Dobbins from last year. So how did you project that into the situation? Obviously, these projections are done way ahead of time. We're going to keep an eye on Javonte Williams in training camp, and if he's going to be on the regular season PUP. You have him for 941 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns and 302 receiving yards, 44 catches and a touchdown. So you have a pretty significant receiving role there for him. How did you project Javonte Williams with the knee injury?
I always look at those when the guy's coming off those kind of injuries, and do they have the 9 or 10 months to recover? And he has 11, so I think he has a chance to be ready for week 1. I don't think he's going to be on the PUP list, but really that stuff right now, it's probably going to affect the drafts going on right now. But like even Bryce Hall from the Jets, I don't think his status has changed, and he might slide a little bit. But I think Williams makes it back. He had 1,200 yards, I think, in his rookie season. And he had 43 catches. So I'm not really too far out of line what he did before. We saw what, when you talk about Peyton, with Kamara and Ingram and the two backs there, what they did, for a few years. So the running back has a chance to get a lot more catches, but Russell Wilson in the past hasn't been a guy that's thrown a lot of balls like Breeze, because Breeze helped his completion rate move the chains by, getting 130, 150 targets to their running back. So, can Wilson add that part to his game to help pad his stats and increase his completion rate? So I think Williams is a guy. I know P. Ryan was pretty good last year off the bench and had some big games. But Williams, I think he's kind of a value right now, and I haven't drafted him. But as a 25th running back and where he goes, I don't know exactly in the thing. But I think that he makes sense, to take a shot on him, because if he's going to catch 40-something passes and have more upside, it's an interesting dilemma there with can Wilson throw well over 100 completions to the running back?
Yeah, he's going RB29 at the 7-11, going just after Pacheco and Montgomery and Connor, and going just in front of Samaje Perine, actually, James Cook, Gibson. I don't know. I'd rather leave him now in the 7th round and pay up to the 5th round when it announces that if he's healthy in the preseason and playing in camp and all that. I'd rather just pay up for him knowing that he's healthy than pay the 7th round price tag and find out that he's missing 4 weeks, 6 weeks or whatever to start the season, or his knee shot or whatever. So I'd rather wait on that for sure. It would be great if, I think it's easier, kind of going back to the Russell Wilson point, I think it's easier as quarterbacks get older to teach them to check the ball. He would probably love, hey, design me an offense where I just got to throw 4-yard passes, especially after last year, Russell Wilson seeing ghosts all over the field. He doesn't know what to do. So I think it'll be a lot easier to teach him to check.
We know when Sean Payton offenses typically seem to feature the running backs, very active in that game. But, I think that the current ADP for Javonte is about right. There's enough upside where you can see why people are taking a chance on him. And to be honest, it's actually fairly easy to handcuff both of these backs. It's just, do you want to pay up for Perrine and put both of the, two spots on basically one position with Denver running backs? The thing with Javonte Williams is this wasn't just a normal torn ACL that, like Shawn mentioned, that he's had plenty of time to recover from. This was a torn ACL, PLC, LCL. I mean, it was basically
the whole thing.
Yes. And that's a really, a huge concern. And look at J.K. Dobbins, he had, pretty bad ACL, and, they pretty much put him on, the back burner for the first, month or half of last season. And then we saw, towards the second half of the season, we saw the old athlete. I like taking some shots on Javonte Williams. And another thing I'll keep mentioning the full-time fantasy strength of schedule. Denver has the number one easiest schedule for running backs this season. So if you're the kind of person that wants a piece of this backfield, which understandable, the Broncos have been synonymous with, fantasy running back production over the years. And of course, Sean Payton, same thing there, seems like a really good marriage. If you're able to get both backs, there should, in totality, there should be, quite a bit of production out of this backfield.
Yeah, no, I see it. I've been burned too many times. And again, I'm not off of it. It's only mid-July. So if we're getting word, I'm in. Samaje Perine, a guy that I would rather take maybe a round later, because I think no matter what, he's going to have a role. Alvin Kamara's rookie year when he was RB3, he only had 35% of the rushing there. So I think there's some room for Perine to be that in the Kamara role or in the Mark Ingram role. Either way, I think he's going to have a significant role there. So I like Perine at his ADP, which is in the 8th round. And so I think he'll have a piece there. I think he might have a pretty good receiver role. Then if Javonte Williams goes on the pup, kind of to the moon there for Perine, I'm sure they'll mix in some other running backs, maybe even add a running back later on. But moving on to these receivers, Jeudy, Sutton, Marvin Mims, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler. I mean, ton of receivers there. They already had Jeudy and Sutton and Patrick coming off an ACL there, or an Achilles. I think it was an ACL. And they still decided to draft Marvin Mims. So that's interesting. So Shawn, you got Jeudy for 84 catches, 1,100 yards, and 9 touchdowns. That's a pretty sweet season, and definitely worth taking him in his mid-3rd round ADP. Looks like you're a Jeudy guy this year.
Yeah, he really finished off well last year. His last 6 games, 37, 523, and 3 on 45 targets. I think that was a big factor. You could see him coming on. He still has to prove he can play 17 games, but the talent is there, and his workouts have been pretty good from what I've heard this year. The last month or so with Wilson. So I think there's a lot to like there. Got to be careful not to push him in front of some other receivers, but I think I have him ranked 14th, and he's definitely close enough where he definitely can be a wide receiver 1 this year.
Yeah. Where are you at with him, Jody? Because I loved Jeudy last year, had more Jeudy than anybody in the whole wide world, especially where it was going. I thought he was going to be better than Sutton. He was. I think he is better than Sutton. He's been a blue chip prospect his entire life, has dealt with injuries. And even in that offense, he was still able to perform, especially down the stretch there once they got rid of Hackett. I just, man, that mid-3rd round ADP, just kind of scares me. I would rather have, Breece Hall or one like Jerry Jeudy has a 0% chance of finishing as the wide receiver 1 overall. But you've got Jahmyr Gibbs could be a top 5 back, Breece Hall, Najee Harris with all the volume he gets. I don't know. Where are you with Jeudy?
Yeah, I see his price. I keep wanting to take him, but I'm rarely getting the opportunity because someone's always, snagging him. I mean, you look at last year, even in we've already lambasted, Nathaniel Hackett enough, but Jeudy was 10th in target quality last year, 9th in yards per target, and he was 24th in slot rate. And I expect that kind of usage will probably continue this year. I see, a lot of value in here. Like in my initial run of projections, I actually had both Denver receivers surpassing 1,000 yards, just because I overall, obviously what we've talked about here is I'm pretty high on this offense in general. Actually, all three of the teams in this division, except for the one we're about to get to, I think can really produce. It's hard for me so far to get too much into Jeudy because, like I said, like you just mentioned, he's going a little higher than I'd like to target him. So I find myself more likely getting Cortland Sutton, who I think is a little bit more of a dynamic big play guy. He was 11th in deep ball targets last year, and he's pretty solid, man coverage. I see him as being a better value right now, just simply because you can get him 3, 4, 5 rounds later.
Yeah, it's almost like they flipped. From last year. Jeudy going into 3-9 as wide receiver 20, and Sutton's kind of the end of like the receiver run. Where's he going here? I'll find it. But he's going like the ninth round or so. People aren't really buying in, although he's up a little bit, 7-4, but still as wide receiver 43, Cortland Sutton. Shawn, your numbers are pretty good for Sutton other than the touchdowns. I think if you take him as wide receiver 43 and he finishes with your projections of 73 catches for 964 yards, only 4 touchdowns, but I think that's pretty good for wide receiver 43.
Yeah, I mean, he started out all right over the first 5 games last year and then just kind of faded off. And he's catch rate's been under 60%, I think, in the last 2 years. And he's got 4 touchdowns in his last 32 games. I mean, he definitely seems like he should be better than that. I mean, that 2019 season, 72, 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns, kind of set what people are hoping for when, Wilson got there last year. So he just, I guess I won't fight for him, but there is definitely the potential, and he has enough size where he should score more touchdowns. And you would think that Peyton would figure a way to get him more involved, especially in the scoring area. His projections for catches are not that much different than last year. He played 15 games, so 2 more games on that, he's about the same.
Yeah, it's disappointing to play all those games, even in a bad offense. Like you think he would have done better. I don't know. He just reminds me. I get the Mike Williams light, Kenny Galladay vibes. He's just this big guy that jumps up and catches it and lands on his head, and then misses a bunch of games and doesn't get yards after catch, and maybe isn't that good. He makes some highlight catches, but I feel like Sutton's I think I'm kind of over Sutton. Again, wide receiver 43, part of a stack with Russell Wilson. Fine, I get it, but I think that opportunity, I think the ship has sailed on Sutton to have kind of that big explosive season. Marvin Mims, a guy that I liked a lot. Did the rookie profile for full-time fantasy. I like Mims. Looked good in college. You have him for 43 catches, 4 touchdowns. So the same, much less catches for Sutton. Same amount of touchdowns for Mims. Do you have him? Where do you got him playing? You got him playing in the slot? You got him playing out wide? Where do you have him on this team?
I don't really, when I'm doing it, really kind of, I guess I do think about it somewhat, but I mean, I don't really kind of define it that way so much. It's just more of, he's a rotational player, kind of a quick guy, good open field running, has upside. Hamler's kind of faced a couple injuries. Patrick's coming off, being hurt last year. Patrick's, kind of surprised, at times before. I just think that Mims has a chance to kind of push to wide receiver 3, and he kind of makes the offense better. So I kind of, gave him favorable projections, I think, to at least people see, like, who is this guy and should I pay attention to him?
Yeah. Greg Dulcich, you got it as the number 1 tight end here, 55 catches and 5 touchdowns, way ahead of Albert Owebenum and Troutman, who Sean Payton brings over from the Saints. Jody, where are you on Dulcich? He's kind of like a tier 4 tight end for me. Is he a guy you've been targeting? Maybe yes, because you're on Russell Wilson this year.
Yeah, I think his ADP is, it's right on. I just feel like most of the targets are going to get funneled through, the receivers. I'm actually optimistic that Tim Patrick's going to come in and actually be fairly productive out of the slot for them. It remains to be seen. Obviously, we've talked about betting on guys first year back from a knee injury. It's a little bit different for receivers and running backs, but Trotman, I think actually it's going to end up being their number 2 tight end, as bad as it is. I don't want nothing to do with Albert O after last year because, he burned so many of us. But overall, I think Dulcich is in that, I typically, the group of tight ends that I typically find myself targeting, that Chig, the Dalton Schultz, Greg Dulcich, those guys are on that territory where, it's like the third tier of tight ends where I think a lot of us end up, taking our guys at that spot.
Yeah, that's a good point about Patrick. I mean, people forget he's a 6'4", 212-pound receiver. He got paid 3 years, $34 million deal a couple of years ago. Like, they had high hopes for him in Denver. So he's not a guy you want to gloss over. I mean, obviously had a major injury, but he's a guy that, who knows, maybe Sean Payton falls in love with him coming in. Where do you have Dulcich, Shawn? Are you just, again, he's going tight end 15 in these drafts over FFWC? Is that kind of where you have him?
Yeah, he played well last year, had some games, and he battled a hamstring injury, I think, last year in college and with Denver. So that, that's kind of somewhat of a factor there. Just more of a steady, not sure if there's enough targets, but in Wilson, when he was in Seattle, he did, have some seasons where, the tight ends caught 8 touchdowns, and it might be the whole group of them catch 8 touchdowns or so. So he will look for the tight end in close. And I think he made enough big plays where he's going to be a factor. He's just, he has to stay on the field and stay, healthy.
Yeah, staying healthy is key. The biggest ability is availability. Moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders. But before we do, speaking of Las Vegas, remind you guys, tonight we have a Circa Las Vegas Fantasy Championship online draft. That's a $349 entry fee over there. There are 5 seats left. That kicks off at 11 p.m. tonight. I will be in that bad boy drafting, having fun. Again, 11 p.m. tonight, Circa Las Vegas Fantasy Championship online. Back to the Las Vegas Raiders. Jimmy Garoppolo right now, the QB1 for the Raiders. A lot of this offense is going to ride on him and what he's able to do. You have him projected for over 3,700 yards and 1 rushing score. Where's the passing scores? 25 passing scores, not bad. As Garoppolo goes, is that how this offense is going to go, Shawn?
Yeah, he definitely has to, we're still not even sure he's going to be ready for week 1, but I think that he'll be okay. Just, missed 6 games last year, 2 the year before, 10 the year before, and he has his only in 2019 he played a full season, and so he's kind of a player that has had talent. He seemed like being a winning quarterback, but battling injuries and staying on the field has been a factor. Just over the last 48 games, his completion rate 68.2% is pretty good, and he gained with San Francisco 8.3 yards per pass attempt, which is pretty good numbers. But there was kind of a rushing offense, big play thing, type of style there. So I think he'll be better than people think, but I'm not 100% sure that he's going to be suit up for all 17 games, and we don't even know what's going to happen for the start of the year. We're still waiting. The last update on him was like on May 28th or something like that. It's been kind of quiet. They paid him the money, and they still haven't even said anything else about it.
Yeah, we'll get a lot of information, like you said, in these next 10 days, training camps, who's playing, who's sitting, who's riding the bike. But speaking of who's playing, who's sitting, Josh Jacobs over here for the Raiders, man, is he doesn't love his contract. Didn't sign whatever the tender there, but again, you got to project him in this offense. You can't just assume he's going to hold out. It's hard for these guys to hold out. They don't have much leverage, man. They hold out during the preseason, during the camp. They don't get that money back as part of the agreement. So it's going to be tough for him to kind of do that. But you have him projected for 257 carries, 1,100 yards, and 10 rushing scores, another 43 catches for 300 yards and a receiving touchdown. Obviously, way down from where he finished last year. RB1 there. What are your thoughts on Jacobs? Did you take any games away due to holdout or injury?
Right now, I'm with approach that he's going to play, and I'll taper it back. He was a guy that I most likely the holdout thing has been a factor in his draft value, but he was going, early draft season. I think he was a first rounder based on what he did last year. Pretty good season, especially when he was get drafted, like probably in the 8th round. So he was pretty good value last year, but because he had such a great season and moved up, he was probably going to be on my fade list. But now everybody else is kind of tapering back. I think he's like the 9th running back right now. So I'm kind of, I'm probably more concerned about him holding out than Barkley for some reason, but it's always tricky when these kind of situations, and especially with a drop down to quarterback play and the offense, you don't think is going to be as good. So I'm probably not going to end up with him in too many teams, at least for now.
Yeah, it was super interesting, man. It just shows how much smarter and everyone's gotten. Now, granted, also when you're drafting in May, June, early July, we're all psychopaths, right? I think Jacob's ADP will start to rise as all the, the kind of tourist season starts and the people start getting back in the draft. And wait a minute, why was last year's best fantasy running back? Why is he going in the 3rd round? And I think he'll end up moving up to late 2nd, mid-2nd round. So we'll see about that. Where are you on Jacobs, Jody?
Big fade for me. The holdout, that's one thing. I mean, it legitimately could. I see bleed into the regular season, and even if it doesn't, I mean, 400 touches, whatever he had last year, that's a scary figure.
Yeah.
Actually, anything over like 370 has been a real big concern. I look back at just the last 3 or 4 years, and you look at 2021, Najee Harris led running backs in touches. He had a 24.5% decline in fantasy production last year. Jonathan Taylor, he missed 6 games last year, 60% decline. Even looking back at the previous year, 2020, Derrick Henry led running backs with 397 touches, 45% decline, missed 9 games the following year. 2019, Christian McCaffrey, 409 touches, played 3 games, dropped off the earth. And the only one that didn't have a double-digit drop was Ezekiel Elliott. He had 381 carries to lead running backs back in 2018. But the only reason he didn't significantly drop off is because all of a sudden he scored 12 rushing touchdowns. Because if you'll remember, Elliott only caught 20 balls the following year, and he hasn't been the same running back since. I get that that's can be taken out of context, but you have to understand. Earlier in this show, Shawn mentioned, Larry Johnson. That's a guy who they fed all these carries to for 2 or 3 years in a row, and it absolutely just ravaged him. So the Raiders are in the same situation. If anything, I think the Las Vegas is a dark horse to be the worst team in the AFC. The contract hasn't been resolved. There's no reason for this team to not be like, well, let's just give him 400. Let's just try to give him 400 touches again. And, for the production to just plummet, under that kind of usage. So it's a big fade for me. Like I said, I don't have much interest at all in this offense. So I have a hard time seeing, even if he stays healthy and even if he is able to play the whole season, I can't get him into my RB1, projections every time I try it.
Yeah, no, what's hard for me is when you get into like the mid to late 30s still there is RB12, RB13. It's
I mean, at some point he becomes right. I've got to go ahead and pull the trigger, because the guy, he's been a great scorer. He's been a very consistent getting that ball into the end zone, which, it's what you're looking for at that point in your draft. But where I expect, Adam, you just mentioned that when the fish get back to drafting here, the guys that are only active here in August, you're probably dead on there with his ADP. Will probably start sliding back up.
You hear that, Chad Schrader? The fish. When the fish start drafting in August, okay? Where are you at? Don't be laying in the shadows, Chad. Only drafting in August. That's my problem with Jacobs is RB10. I can skip him in the early 3rd round. There's Breece Hall, some other players there, but man, he's been falling late. Sometimes he falls to the late 3rd, and he's around like Drake London. Josh Jacobs. I agree with 100% with everything you said, but he could stay healthy again. If he does, he could finish his RB1 again. Drake London's not going to win me a fantasy championship in the 3rd round. So Jacobs can. That's where eventually you got to be like, okay, whatever. But once he creeps up to the 2nd round, I think we're definitely off him. Not much else to talk about. Zamir White, Abdullah, Brandon Bolden. They're if you want to take one as a handcuff, fine, but nothing to see there. Receivers, interesting. Davante Adams, the wide receiver 1 there. Not much to say there, although Jimmy Garoppolo might lead to a little bit less in production, but you have him, Shawn, for 98 catches, 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. Again, we're splitting hairs. Right now, he's going early second round. Let's see. He's going, at the 2.1, wide receiver 9. If he puts up those type of numbers, we're going to be happy with that. Right, Shawn?
Yeah, he gets open. He has great hands. The only concern I think would be, he scored double-digit touchdowns 3 years in a row. Is that repeatable? I think I have him for 10, and that's the area that, Garoppolo hasn't had, these big touchdown seasons, but he only has really one great receiver. So that's the area that I'm most concerned for Adams.
Yeah, to me, it's a concern. Again, he's kind of a deep he works vertically, and with Jimmy Garoppolo, his age, his arm strength, that could be an issue. More interesting conversation here to me is Jacoby Myers versus Hunter Renfrow. They're both slot receivers. Hunter Renfrow was sensational two years ago. Last year was injured, and just even when he played, he wasn't involved. They had a new coach there. We thought like, oh, he's from New England, and he's gonna, you got all the little slot receivers that smashed in New England. Hunter Renfrow is going to smash, and it just didn't happen. But again, I believe in the talent with Hunter Renfrow, 27 years old. From Clemson, they used to call him third and Renfrow there at Clemson because his third down, nobody could cover him, was always getting open. And Renfrow is basically free in drafts. Where's he going? I'll find that. But Jody, where do you got, again, these two guys are slot receivers. Where do you have them in your rankings, your projections?
I'd rather take a chance on Myers. Renfrow, we had that one going back to 2020, was it 21, where he was, it's really good. And then last year he fell off. But like I said, I don't even expect Josh McDaniels to necessarily make it through this season. So, it's just one of the many reasons that I'm fading, all the Raiders right now. We have this whole situation with Jimmy Garoppolo's, his shoulder, his elbow, whatever it is, where they can actually get out of his contract. This is like, again, in me looking at over-unders and all the totals and all the projections and things, I think that, overall, it's going to be a shame that Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't have the kind of established history that we like to see of a quarterback that just funnels nothing but targets to his wide receiver 1. We're not going to know about this chemistry that they can possibly develop. Obviously, they haven't had any time together in OTAs. It's just going to be kind of a big mystery. So it's kind of a fade for me. But, my personal projections, I have Jacoby Myers at 101 targets, and I had Renfrow at like 80 in the lower 80s. So, to me, it feels like Renfrow is, Myers is quite clearly the number 2 guy there, but I've still got Davante Adams at close to a 30% target share, and Williams is Myers, is under 19%. So
yeah, Myers going as wide receiver 55 in the 10th round of these drafts. Renfrow wide receiver 71 in the 13th round. I mean, you can get both in a stack.
I've got I've got Myers inside my top 50, but Renfro's, in the 70s. So that's fairly accurate.
Yeah. It's, again, I love Renfrow. I think he's too talented. They got to get him involved. I would love to see him traded. I mean, again, him and Myers both play the same position. Nothing really to talk about for tight end here either. Rookie tight end, fade rookie tight ends. Austin Hooper, tight end 2 there. I mean, you only, but you do have Michael Mayer here for 61 catches and 6 scores. What am I missing here on Michael Mayer, rookie tight end, 696 yards? That'd be a tight end 1 type season.
Yeah, they give him to you too in some of these drafts. He just, McDaniel said, he had Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez, so used to having the big tight end in New England when he was there. I just think his physical style makes sense. And, he looked like he was ready to move into the NFL. So I gave, Austin Hooper's been around and nothing special to me. So I think that he moves in there and he's probably, I would think probably the second best scoring receiving option for them. When you're looking at that team, I was just looking at the the structure. I mean, they got Jacobs, a really good running back last year. Adams, a really good receiver. Two possession guys, and maybe an upside tight end. If you slide Tom Brady in at quarterback, you might like this. You might like this team. But because it's Garoppolo, you're like, nah, it's not
part
happening.
owner.
So it really comes down to why people don't like him is who's playing quarterback. I mean, there is some talent. I mean, Myers and Renfro can move the chains and catch the ball and can get open. And Adams obviously is good. And, Jacobs catch some balls. And I think Myers makes sense. But, like you said, rookie tight ends tend to fail. But he looks like a pretty physical guy. So I think that as a cheat tight end too, I think he's attractive to me. And I have him projected higher than most for sure, I think, on that. But we'll see.
Yeah. Yes. For sure. I'm just going to fade the rookie tight end thing. Obviously, when you're doing projections, you got to have people catching the balls. You're not really necessarily looking at if they're a rookie or not. But I'm always going to fade, and I'm going to be right every single time except for 3 times in the history of football. Mike Ditka and a couple others, Pitts and somebody else. But
Gronkowski really came on in his rookie season though. In the second half, he had those couple of three touchdown games. So Myers is going to be a stud late in the year. Don't miss on him. From you can draft him. He's going late for you. Come on,
grab him off waivers. I mean, he's a rookie tight end. No way, he's not going to do anything for six weeks. Can't wait. But all right, guys. Well, that's it for tonight. Extra long show tonight, unfortunately for us, but we try to get through all this stuff as quick as we can for you guys. But this was a great division. Again, just want to remind everyone tonight, Circa Las Vegas Fantasy Championship online draft, 11 p.m. That'll be a blast. I'll be in that. Anything else tonight, guys, or what do we got next week? NFC East.
Yeah, I think so.
That'll be coming up next. The big boy division.
The big boy, that's right, the big boy division. So we'll hit you with the NFC East. We're gonna hit you with another maybe a 2-part series next week to catch up for the week that we missed. But awesome, can't wait. Love doing these with you guys. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Remember to like, subscribe. Get in here, ask us all types of questions. We're ready to answer those. I'll be back Friday night for the red versus blue draft. I'll be drafting in that as well. That'll be fun. So for everybody at Full Time, for Jody, for Shawn, for myself, thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you next week.